90% of people, especially women, live their entire life getting what they ordered and never what they wanted. I ignored all of the knowings and the inner tuition because I wanted it to be what I wanted it to be so desperately. The voice in your head is not you. You're the one listening to the voice in your head. The biggest things that stops anyone from getting what they want is they're not clear. If you don't clear these patterns that you're bringing with you, forget it. You have to clear the cycles to create the confidence so that you can trust yourself. We have to clear the resentment to create the result. And we have to clear the loss to create the love.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Arthurton. And today we are talking about creating your very best life, whether that be in love, in business, in your health, or whatever it is that you want for your life. We're going to be talking about what is it that most often stands in the way of us achieving the things that we want, and then what we can do about it. And so my guest today is an expert in all these things. Her name is Riana Malia. She is a certified NLP practitioner, a trauma-informed transformation coach. She is also a practitioner of something called quantum time release, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But this is what she does. Her work is all about empowering smart, ambitious women to live their best lives. So thanks for joining me, Riana.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
As I was saying to you a few minutes ago, did a bunch of stalking and listened to your story. And I love people's origin stories about how they got to the work that that they're doing in the world, because there's always something meaningful. And it also gives people who might be in the thick of something really not great to know that there's possibility on the other side. So if you could just kind of take us to what led you to all of these certifications that you have, and how you are empowering women today.
Absolutely. So growing up, I grew up with a single mom, and she worked really hard to take care of me. My dad was in California. I grew up in Minnesota mostly, born in Maui, mostly grew up in Minnesota. And she, I was lucky and fortunate to have my grandparents, my Bumpy and Grammy, who lived in a tiny town in southern Minnesota. So I spent all my summers and breaks there and grew up in a horse barn, which was amazing. But growing up, my dad wasn't really around, here and there, little bits. He had another family, super involved with them, didn't really ever help my mom. So he was kind of that, once a year, maybe once every couple of years visit, just wasn't very present. And then I was going off to college, and he said, I know I never helped you, never helped your mom. I'm going to take care of your room and board so that you don't have to worry about that piece, this year. And I was like, okay, amazing. So I got to school, and a couple of months in, I got a call from the housing department, and they're like, yeah, the bill was never paid and you're maxed on loans. So you either have to get somebody else paid or you have to leave. Oh. And so I was unclear in that moment. Well, do I leave school? Do I figure it out? And one thing about me that is true is that I am very resourceful. And a lot of times in life, when things are thrown at us, we get stuck in the fact that we don't have the resources to get us through, the time, the money, the support, the energy. When the truth is, oftentimes, Jennifer, I really truly believe that we're not tapping into our resourcefulness. So I decided I was going to stay at school. I moved out of the dorms. I found a 5-bedroom house off campus. I got 3 jobs, and I filled the other 4 bedrooms, and I stayed in school. And I made a choice. And then fast forward a few years, I met who would become my husband, and very young, we were babies. Don't ever get married when you're 22. You don't know who the hell you are.
In there,
we were very young. Yes. And there was a knowing before we even got married that something wasn't quite right. But I was certain at that very old age of 22 that I was going to end up, the old cat lady by myself, right? Because I was so old. Midwest, we get married a little bit younger. But anyway, so I didn't listen to myself. I didn't listen to the intuition. So we got married, and it was a lonely marriage. Now, I don't regret a single moment of it because my baby angel was born out of that union. But eventually we did divorce, and it was around when Maddie was 6. And like I said, it was a very lonely marriage. And it was one of those things, though, you get to the point where it's like you grieved for what you wanted for your dream, for your life and for your family. And then it turned, yucky and ugly, which was unfortunate. At that time, I was heavily involved in personal development and coaching, and then also took on a role of practice development in the oncology space. And so my dad started kind of showing up a little bit more after that in our lives. And about 3 years after my divorce, he came to me with a proposition and said, hey, I think it's the time. I think you guys should move to California and take over this family business and like breathe. And Maddie gets to grow up in this amazing small town. And I was like, okay, well, my mom, and granted, my parents have been divorced since I was 2. So it had been my whole lifetime.
Right.
And they were friendly. But, you know, my mom had just had a surgery that left her partially like unable to use her arm. And she was in cosmetology. So that was a problem.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said, you know, I can't leave my mom, and I have horses and cats, and like, I love them. And he's like, bring your mom, bring the horses, I'll build a barn. And I was like, okay. And it just felt like a moment where like I could breathe. You know, you're working so hard, and I was in this career, and I was raising my baby, and I was dealing with all of this stuff emotionally, and I'd been in therapy, and I was trying to work through all the stuff that you deal with after divorce. And it just felt like, oh my gosh, like not like a free pass, but like a blank canvas to start over in a different energy. So against all of my intuition, I said, okay, great. And my best friends, who are like my chosen family, they're like, what are you doing? We know he can't be trusted, right? And I was like, nope, it's different this time. So I packed up my mom, my daughter, 2 horses and 3 cats.
So can I just pause you there for a second? Because I want to go back to your intuition point.
Yeah.
Like what was that intuitive nudge that you had? Like what was niggling at you about this situation?
That like in your gut where you almost feel kind of nauseous, but yet your heart starts to race, and you go, okay, I've had all these experiences that are absolute evidence that he doesn't follow through and he can't be trusted. But I want so desperately for this to be true,
right,
that I'm going to do it.
Right.
I'm going to roll the dice.
And you just ignored the gut feeling. You ignored the intuition, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to do this because I want my dad's approval.
I want a relationship with him. I want to live in California. I want to get out of it was 40 below that winter, by the way. And I had
That's enough to do it.
So picture this just for a second. It's 40 below zero. I have chickens, I have horses, and I'd go out every day and, you know, go put water for the horses in their water tank. And it had a heater, so it didn't get icy. Well, it was so cold that the metal of the pump thing snapped off. It's the middle of winter. A plumber you can't get into a frozen ground. So for the entire rest of the winter, Jennifer, I had to take a hose and open the window, run it, attach it to the washing machine, water the horses, then snake out the water. I cried so many tears of like, I was so cold, and I hate I'm an island girl. I don't like to be cold. So that let's probably play a piece of that. But yes, to answer your question in all seriousness, I ignored all of the knowings and the inner tuition because I wanted it to be what I wanted it to be so desperately.
Right.
So off we went against, you know, my best friends, like so many tears, like, don't do it. Like, just don't do it. It's not, you know, and I did it. But I made a promise to my baby girl, because I moved around quite a bit when I was growing up, and she was 9, and I was taking her away from the only life she'd ever known. And I promised her I was only going to do it once.
Right.
So we're going to go. It's going to be wonderful. We get there. Starts off, it feels pretty amazing and magical. And we had the horses. A special guy came and drove the horses across the country and slept with them so they were safe. And they came and they arrived, and it was amazing. It was so fun, and it felt like a fairy tale. And a couple weeks in, that nudging began very, very, very soon. And my dad was like dating some woman and chasing her around the country. He wasn't even around. And so I'm starting to unravel this business that was so mismanaged that for the whole year prior to my arrival, it was a candle company, gorgeous, hand-poured, amazing, beautiful. They had never turned it off test mode. So all the sales for an entire year had never been actually charged to anyone's credit cards. I mean, it was just a mess. And he wasn't around, and I kind of started having that feeling like something felt really off, and why were we even here? And I wrote him a letter. And I just was like, I don't really know, but this doesn't feel good. I don't even know why we're here. You're never here. And this business is a nightmare. And, you know, all of this capital that you said that there was to make sure that, you know, Maddie could go to school and be swimming and doing all the things and take care of my mom. I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And it wasn't long thereafter that, so that was I guess we moved the end of July. She started school, and her birthday was November 30th. And the next day he had left again to go take this woman back to South Dakota or something. And I found myself in the studio, and there was a man who used to work with my father before we moved here, and he came to pick up the mailers for me to take to the post office to do the every door thing, so you don't have to put stamps on everything.
Yeah.
And as we're conversing, I hear somebody come through the front door of the studio, and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by federal agents. I'm put in handcuffs, and there are guns pointed at my head. And my daughter is supposed to be coming home from school with like a new friend for the first time.
Oh my goodness.
Minutes.
Oh my goodness.
And I've never been so terrified in my life. And I said, I need to call my mom and tell her not to come. They're like, you can't touch the phone. Like, so they started explaining to me that they had been watching the studio and investigating for like following me and watching the studio, and that they had these concerns and suspicions for the last year. And that, you know, they believed there to be drug activity happening and all this stuff. So I had landed this Sky Mall account. You know, do you remember like Delta Airlines?
Yeah.
Sky Mall magazine?
Yeah.
And I was so excited because I'm like, okay, amazing. This is going to give us introduction to the market. And we had these gorgeous towers, and it was a perfect fit. And so I had actually had an order come in, and I had put the label on and sent it out. And we had somebody else that did all the other regular candle shipping. And they asked me, did you pack this box? And I said, if it's a Sky Mall customer, yes, great. They opened it. There's nothing in there except beautiful candles. They took it outside. They had been working with the FedEx and the UPS drivers and had like set this whole thing up so they'd stopped the truck. So they're like, no problem, we'll get it back on the truck. So the thing goes, and the guy who had worked there before was there. He was in handcuffs in another part in the office. And they get a search warrant for his house, and they go. So my daughter comes back with my mom and this new little friend, and there's all these undercover, and there's police cars, there's sheriff, and she comes into the studio. Now they had put away their guns and taken the handcuffs off of me, but she comes in and she starts to cry. I mean, it's scary, right?
Yeah.
And I made up this whole story about something happened in the lot next door. Like I just made up because I didn't want her to be afraid. And so I'm like, you go next door to our house, because our house was connected to the studio. I'm like, go in with Nana. She'll make you and your friend a little snack, and you guys can watch a movie, whatever. So anyway, ultimately they went up to this guy's house, and they found drugs and money, and they found all this stuff. But they were like, well, I don't know. You obviously didn't have anything to do with it. My father comes back, and he was like, I don't know. It wasn't me. Again, like, oh my God, what do I do? So months go by, and then Maddie and I actually went to Minnesota to see our best friends. And while we were there, they did a raid simultaneously on my home, my dad's house, which was up in Northern California, my former stepmother's house where he used to live down the street, married to, broke down doors, held my mom in a kitchen without letting her put a bra on, like broke stuff, smashed stuff in the house. It was insane. Now, obviously, they didn't find anything.
Yeah.
At the house. So at this point, I can't reach anybody. All of a sudden, my bank accounts are frozen. Maddie and I are going to have to fly back to Minnesota or to California. I don't have any credit card. I don't have a bank card. I have nothing. So my friends gave us like cash to get home. And I got home, and my whole world was blown up. So
yeah,
the DA showed up at my house and said, look, you know, we've been watching you. We've been following you. We don't really believe that you have anything to do with this, but there's something very big going on. And so, you know, you could lose Maddie. Like, they're telling me all this stuff, and I'm so terrified. And every single noise I hear, I think someone's coming to get us.
For sure.
So long story short, this went on for a long time. He was never convicted. There was some embezzlement, something about the capital that he inherited from somebody, which was legit, but it was supposed to be spent philanthropically, not the way it was spent. So he ended up giving that money to the charities it was meant to go for, but he was never actually convicted of any of those other things. For me, however, it put me in a position where I now had moved my daughter and my mother across the country, knew no one here, now had no business, no income,
Right.
and I had to make a decision. So I could either go back to Minnesota, which we totally could have in a heartbeat and would have been fully wrapped up in love and support, or I could keep my promise. And I tapped into that part of me that was like, how the F am I going to do this? Because I don't know anybody here. I don't even know what to do. I don't even know how to breathe. And had, cut off relationship with my father, obviously, like so betrayed and destroyed of how somebody could put not only their daughter, but their granddaughter in such danger.
Yeah.
So I racked up a couple $100,000 in credit card debt. I went back to school. I got a real estate license. I kept Maddie in her life, took care of my mom, and I figured it out. And in the process of then going back to therapy and working through yet another abandonment and betrayal and of, my father, my ex-husband, my father again in such a huge way, and like he wrote me this ridiculous letter, and then I wrote a page for every sentence back. So it was like 20-page letter, and I never sent it to him because I wasn't obligated. It was cathartic for me. But what I realized in that moment was this feels very familiar. And while it's the, talk therapy, whatever, it's fine. It's helpful, but it's temporary resolution, right? It didn't actually heal me. And it kept me tethered to all the anger and sadness and rage and just, I couldn't be present to the joy and the delight and the wonderful in my life because I was so hurt and so angry. And it was at that moment or at that time that someone introduced me to a little bit of work that became then my life's work. And in a matter of weeks, there was parts of me that I didn't recognize in all the best way. And it gave me the ability, versus 3 years of therapy of just talking about it, which is exhausting, but it gave me the ability to, in an actual like alchemical forgiveness way, like fully forgave my father. Now, let me be clear. Forgiveness does not mean you get a seat at my table.
Right.
Forgiveness does not mean what you did is okay and I'm letting you off the hook.
Yeah.
Forgiveness does not mean you get access in any way, shape, or form. But what it does mean is I'm taking back my joy, my power, and all of like the being consumed by all of those feelings is gone.
Yeah, I mean, that is a powerful story because, and I want to dig in on this, on the whole notion that we were just talking about ignoring your intuition. I think there is not a woman on this planet today, and I'm sure of anybody listening that hasn't had that niggling that they ignored and ended up somewhere where they're like, if I had only listened. And I mean, I don't believe in mistakes. I think things happen the way that they're supposed to happen so that you get the lesson that you need. But like, why is it, like, what is it in us that causes us to override this? Like, we have such a powerful force within us in terms of our intuition. Like, why do we as women especially override our intuition? Like, what is it that makes us do that?
Well, I think we start to not trust ourselves because we're like, well, we thought we knew, and look how that turned out. Whether it's a failed marriage, a bankrupted business, a bad business partner decision, moving across the country with, animals and family that knowing no one. And so I think, the antidote to that is really getting to understand and learn how to make values-driven decisions, which takes away that yucky middle, right? So if you can make a clean yes and clean no based on who you truly are and your non-negotiables and your desires, it gives you this like tool, and you then no longer have to worry about, I don't know. Am I trusting myself? Because listen, when we create your soul connection codex and we do a values elicitation and create that blueprint, like if something, and again, you can run anybody through this model, but if something doesn't line up with those values, and for sure, if there's anything on or not on, depending on the context of the thing on that non-negotiable list, it's a clean no. And that's not your person or your partner or your, and so you get to take all the noise and drama and decision fatigue that comes from living in the devil of not trusting yourself, the maybe.
Yeah.
And it's gone. And then that way you get to just like amplify and tap into that intuitive part of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, because I think for all of us that have gone against our intuition, like we're making a decision, and I know this is true for me, and you can tell me if this is your experience with your clients, is like you're making, and I think you explain this as well too, you're making a decision based on this like wounded part of you that wants love or wants acceptance or wants, you know what I mean, to be enough or like whatever it is. And that like that wound can override like what you know to be true. Like
Yes.
you said, and this is the part that I find fascinating. It's like you said, I had all of the evidence lined up to tell me that this was not, but yet there's this part of me that it's so powerful it can literally override all thought and logic.
Yeah. Because think about it, like we have, how do we, where, to your point, where do we make decisions? From a wounded child, from an adaptive child, or from a healed adult? Well, most of the time, it's the wounded child or the adaptive child who figured out I need to be, I'm too much or I'm not enough. So I'm gonna make myself fit into this box, or I'm gonna be quiet, or I'm gonna be this because otherwise people aren't gonna love me or they're not gonna stay, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I just want to say, like, on the other side of not, all, like you said, there's no accidents, there's no coincidences.
Yeah.
I mean, had all of this not happened, and had I not come to California, I mean, 16 months ago, I married the greatest love of my life, who's the most incredible human being ever, and I would have never met him or found
See?
him.
Yeah.
So on the other side of, if you're in the space where you're like, I can't see beyond the pain, the trauma, the freaking crisis of this moment, and how could it anything ever be good? Even if you're on the other side of the moment, but you haven't gotten to the place of joy or healing yet, I just want you to know that it's possible. It's really, really possible. And it doesn't have to take years of retelling the story in order for you to heal and actually release all that stuff that's keeping you tethered to the pain in the first place.
Yeah. I want to come back to your clear yes and clear no. But first thing, before I get to that part, when we're making these decisions from this place of like the wounded child or whatever, we're actually not conscious of that, right? Like that's something that our subconscious brain, it's the program that our subconscious brain is playing out for us.
Yes.
So again, it's kind of overriding anything that we know that's like conscious, rational thought. So can you talk a little bit about the subconscious versus the conscious and how that holds us back?
Absolutely. So I want you to think about your body for a moment. And I want you to think about everything from the neck up is your conscious mind. Okay. It is our critical faculties. It's everything we know. It's what makes us good at our life. And it's our goal setter. And we use it all day long. It's 10%, which means the rest of our body, everything from the neck down, the other 90% is our unconscious mind. So if our conscious is our goal setter, our unconscious is our goal getter. It's the operating system.
I like that.
It's also the literal library of everything you've ever experienced in every moment of your life on this earth. So everything that's been said to you, done to you, everything you've said to another person, every experience you've ever had is held at a cellular level in your body, in the unconscious mind. And remember that 90% of who we are today was fully picked up and formed between the age of 0 and 7.
Crazy, eh?
So much of the programming and the strategy and the neurology are decisions and values and beliefs of a child. And so when we aren't trusting and when we can't, we're not knowing that we're, making decisions from a 5-year-old that learned that if they were too much or too little, that meant people were going to leave them or not love them or you weren't good enough or whatever it was. It's hard to understand then why you can almost get to the life that you want, but you never actually really get there.
Right. Because there's this whole body. And so it's interesting, like you say that. And I immediately am thinking, the relationship that women in particular, I think, have with their bodies is usually a kind of a love-hate relationship, and maybe a little on the love and a lot on the hate, because we're always just trying to morph and, and I know this to be true for me where like I lived above the head. Everything was, here. And meanwhile, my body was always telling me stuff that I was like, oh, sit down, shut up kind of thing. And I
Yes.
think most of us have been, you alluded to this earlier, most of us have been taught not to trust ourselves. Because we don't trust our bodies, right? Because we don't look exactly like we should, like the airbrush picture that we see every time we turn on the TV or the magazine, right? So there's
Yes.
this innate like disconnect from our body that's storing all of this memories of things that's like literally trying to communicate with us, but we can't hear it.
Exactly. And we see this so clearly, like the evidence with quantum biology around that memory is at a cellular level, right? Because we see it in when people talk about, generational things and behaviors and
Right.
patterns that are passed down by DNA. We see it in animals that, have never
Right.
seen something that all of a sudden they're terrified of, but a generation before them had. And we see it in humans all the time, like even with a simple thing like somebody who hated pickles their whole life and they get an organ transplant and all of a sudden they love pickles and they're craving it and they are like, why? And they come to find out that that person whose organ they received, that was their favorite food.
I know.
But when we don't release all of that, then we see it manifest in the body with anxiety, overwhelm, depression,
right.
autoimmune disorders, illness, injury, disease, patterns and behaviors that keep showing up, people in the same relationships and circumstances and money problems, and just over and over and over again. And again, if it's not released properly, it'll continue indefinitely between now and dead. Then, instead of living the life and having the love that you desire, you're just always wishing for it and wondering why you never get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because all of this stuff is like literally just stored here, like in our bodies.
Yes.
And we just continue running the same program over and over and over again, like you said, until, you have a crisis or something causes you to like forces you to now be like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of my own BS. Like
if I tell the story one more time, I'm literally going to throw up. Like that visceral reaction in your body when you're like, I just don't even want to hear myself tell the story anymore. It's like,
because I mean, that was so true for me. So like when my life fell apart at the age of 50 and I had to like reinvent myself, like the one thing that became very clear to me was like, I'm responsible for my life. If I want my life to be different, I have to show up differently in it. Now, how do I figure that out? Right. And that like realization, and I have no idea where that came from, but was such a powerful shift for me. I mean, like kind of mad at myself because I created this mess to begin with, but also feeling very empowered because if I created this, I could create something equally as big and beautiful on the other side.
Yeah.
Right. So it really is like, it's, it can be confronting yourself and all of your, internal programming can be really like confronting, right? Uncomfortable. But also there's such beauty, like you said, on the other side of it. Like there's so much hope.
Well, and it's so true because, and I tell everyone when we have a conversation, whether you do this work with me or on your own or with someone else, anytime if you are about to, and so I truly believe that when we're ready for that growth or that transformation or that line in the sand moment, the universe brings us the perfect person or resource or podcast or whatever. And it's up to us then to like trust that nudge, take inspired action and do something about it. But I always tell everyone, when you step into that space, like the voice in your head is about to get so loud because the unconscious mind is designed to keep us safe. So full on amygdala hijack goes, oh no, this is not the time for you to do this work. You're not this enough. You got to wait till you have more money or more time or get to summer or get out of summer or whatever it is. And the thing that people don't understand, and this is where it gets even more messy with, is it my intuition? Am I not listening to myself? The voice in your head is not you. You're the one listening to the voice in your head. That's the conditioned part of you that, comes from all the story and all the experiences. And so the voice in your head, I mean, I don't know about you, but she can be quite a bitch. I mean, she's not necessarily the nicest person in the world. And if she was your best friend, would you like hang out with her? For a lot of people, the answer would be no. She can be mean and really like condescending. And so it's really critical that you understand when you're like, whoa, that was interesting, but now like my voice in my head keeps telling me this is not the right thing. This is not the right time. Please no, because it's so much easier and safer to stay in the trauma that you've survived and the chaos and the loneliness and the fill in the blank than to step into the unknown of what's possible on the other side. That you have to expect that. And if you don't, so I made the mistake only once of getting off a call and not prepping that person who just made this biggest decision of her life for her life, and then immediately freaked out, cancel this. This is not right for me. I have to, and I was like, that was fully on me, because had I pre-framed her and shared that this was going to happen, I'm like, then you get to laugh at the voice and be like, I'm good, I got it. But if you don't know that, and then you start thinking that that's your intuition, you stay in that self-imposed box forever.
Yeah. What you just said there, that sentence you said, the voice in your head is not you. Like that's a mic drop moment for sure. And if people listening, if you walk away with one sentence out of this whole conversation that we have, let it be that one, because we have been conditioned to believe that voice, right? Like that is the only truth. And the reality is it's never the truth. Right. So that's so powerful. So how do you help people then distinguish between that, like to get to the clear yes and the clear no, like whether it's my brain telling me lies or whether it is actually my intuition guiding me in a different direction? How do people get clear on that?
So my methodology, right, is the clear to create method, because the truth is, as much as my tagline has always been, your very best life, whether we've been besties for 50 years or we meet in the grocery store, whatever, like I want you to live your version of your very best life. Right. But you can't go from being stuck in the old story of, the past pain and the trauma and the childhood trauma and the debt and the divorce and the failed business and the friendship that you had for 40 years that now all of a sudden just blew up in your 50s because of, you can't just go from all of that to living your very best life. That's not how it works. Right. So I use then my framework. So the quantum pattern protocol is like the how inside of the methodology. So it's 3 phases where it starts with clarity, right? We got to get really clear about where you are and crystal clear about what you want. Yeah. Because that's one of the biggest things that stops anyone from getting what they want is they're not clear. Right. So then we get to clear out all the dysfunction and then actually create the life and replace the strategy and the knowledge and the behavior. But you have to clear the story to create your life, right? You have to clear the story to create the life. If you want a new story, you have to stop telling the old one. And there's a lot of secondary gain and payoff for telling our stories. We get to be right. We get attention. We get sympathy. We get whatever. And it's like, but you have to clear the story to create the life. You have to clear the patterns to create the partnerships, right? You want beautiful romantic partnerships, friendships, family, professional partnerships, co-creations. But if you don't clear these patterns that you're bringing with you, forget it. You don't have access to fulfilling, loving in partnerships that are full of integrity and, mutual respect. And you have to clear the cycles to create the confidence so that you can trust yourself, right? Because you're like, well, I always end up this. I never finish anything. I always do this. Nothing ever works out for me. All those cycles that you continue to speak into an existence, we got to clear those so you can actually create that confidence and know, like, I fully own myself, my life, my circumstances, my future. We have to clear the resentment to create the results. And a lot of people don't even realize when they feel resistance, I will often ask, what are you resenting? Because it's underneath it and keeps you from getting what you want, and the self-sabotage and all the things that show up unconsciously. And we have to clear the loss to create the love, right? And so we have to be able to be willing to get the clarity, excavate all those core stories and things that you're really currently committed to, whether you're conscious of it or not, that's keeping you stuck. To recognize what is meant for you, what your values are, what your non-negotiables are, what your desires are. And then let's clear all the BS, right? Let's get rid of. So we have strategy for everything. It's how we know what to do next. We have a strategy for shopping and sex and health and illness and fun and pain. Like, it's how the brain goes, okay, this is what we do. This was step one. Now, for cooking. So next we have to put the water in the pan in order to make it boil, right? So, and some strategy serves us well and some keeps us in this cycle and pattern of constant disappointment. So then we get to discover who the heck you are. Like, who are you now? Who are you now outside of these old labels and serving everyone else and having this stupid voice in your head tell you that you're not worthy and you're not enough, or you're not lovable, or you're not this, or you whatever. And then getting to do the ultimate release, right? Using quantum time release to actually release all the weight of 50 years of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, shame, and all the limiting beliefs and limiting decisions that have formed as a result of all the trauma.
Right.
In a way in which is content free. We're not going back to a memory that's something that happened when you were 5. So after all of that is released and we get to get the soul learnings of who you really are and anchor that in and future pace so that going forward we have a different relationship with those emotions. Because if you think about those emotions that I mentioned, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and shame, and they each have a ribbon.
Yeah.
And in your life, every time after root cause experience, which you don't have conscious memory of, by the way, every time you have a significant emotional experience with anger, for instance, a marble goes on that ribbon. So today, when something happens that makes you angry, it's not just the today thing. It's 50 plus years or whatever of marbles, that gestalt, that charge. So we get to release that, transmute it, get the soul learnings, create new relationship going forward. And now you have this energetic, clear slate to then move into creating the life and love that's meant for you. And we're going to replace all that old neurology and behavior, because if we don't, then you just fall right back to old patterns. It's why people are in therapy for years and they're like, I don't get it. I've done all this work. Well, the unconscious mind can't fill in the blank. So if we don't replace it, then you don't have the skills to go with the knowledge. And then you get to really, fall in love with yourself and trust yourself and confidently hold boundaries and expertly communicate your needs and really deepen the richness in every single one of your relationships. And then now that you have that, and now that you're open to be able to, let the creative part of you flow and operate on all cylinders again, and you have all this clarity and you're crystal clear about who you are and what you want, right? We don't go to a restaurant and tell the server that we want a protein and a vegetable and a salad. And then when they bring us a pork chop and Brussels sprouts and a Caesar, well, we got what we ordered, but what we wanted was a ribeye and roasted asparagus and an arugula salad with beef and goat cheese. We got what we ordered, not what we wanted. 90% of people, especially women, live their entire life getting what they ordered and never what they wanted.
Oh,
so
that's such a great analogy. Like, thank you for using that. So good.
Yeah. And then we take a step further and we go, okay, now we know what we want. Now we're going to throw in another framework, the aligned achievement framework, and we're going to reverse engineer those goals in a very specific way. Because again, back to our point of the unconscious mind can't fill in the blanks. If we're setting a goal 6 months from now and we're like, all right, awesome. What are we going to do today? Great. What do we do next? We miss about 60% of the most important steps. But using this framework, when we reverse engineer them, so we create a very specific format, and then it's what has to happen in the second before you achieve it to know that you're there. Right? So let's say it's financial goal. Well, I opened my banking app and I saw the balance, right? So that happened, and then I knew I was there, or the relationship or the trip or the job, whatever. And then we micro step backwards all the way back to today. What has to happen just before that? What has to happen just before that? So when you get overwhelmed or life is crazy and you're spiraling and you're like, I don't trust myself. I don't know what to do next. I don't even know how to breathe. You just look down and you have the blueprint. And then we take it a step further because we've done timeline work now with quantum time release. Now we're going to take those goals and install them on your future timeline so that you experience them in all the senses, which ignites the reticular activating system in the brain, which is now going to be laser focused, looking for the people and the opportunities and the resources that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise to make sure that you actually get to accomplish and live this life that's meant for you.
Right. So can we just unpack this a little more using a concrete example? So let's say, for example, let me just use a common one. Like, money is your thing, right? Like you're in debt right now, let's say, and you have a goal that you want to make $100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how, and you grew up in a poor family, you have this like, scarcity and lack mentality, like deeply ingrained in, you didn't get to go to the parties because your parents couldn't buy the present and you didn't get the new shoes. And all of this is like in
Oh,
there. Right.
yes.
But yet you have this goal. Right. And I think what you just said, part of what you just said is like putting yourself in the vision of having it and then reverse engineering it. Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. So we actually create a goal in a format of like on December 31st, 2025 or sooner, I am celebrating blah, 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 blah. Right.
Okay.
So
Right.
yes, in that. But before you can get there, and this is such, I'm so glad you brought this up. So all the things you just said, all the money stories, right? Grew up poor. You have to, you always get the short end of the stick. You never get what you want. Everybody else has more. It's always for everybody else. So one of the most powerful things that you can do and literally rewire your thoughts in the next 72 hours. Can we do something actionable? Can we like
Yeah,
here's something
absolutely.
you could do?
Love
So
action.
this is my fear to focus framework. This is what I want you to do because here's what I need you to realize. So every day we think between 65,000 and 85,000 thoughts.
Crazy.
Right? 90% of those thoughts are recycled. Same thoughts you thought yesterday and the day before, and the week before, and the month before, in the middle of the night. 75% of those thoughts are negative. Now, a lot of people will push back on that because they're like, I'm a pretty positive thinker. But when we do the analysis, when we look the way the brain is wired, most of the time, you're fully focused on everything you don't want. So let's use this example. I don't want to be in debt anymore. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't want to have to miss out on the travel and the fun and all my friends are doing. And I don't want to have to have this dumb car. And I don't want to be in this position and I don't want to do it alone. Right? I don't. And people think that that's declaring that that's positive because they're declaring like, I don't want any of this in my life.
Right.
Well, the universe and the unconscious mind does not hear the clarifying don't. It just knows what you are really focused on. And it's all you will continue to get. You will never have any money. So here's my invitation. I want you to get 2 clean pieces of paper. And on one, I want you to write away. And on one, I want you to write toward. All right, I'm giving you an exercise that I do with my private clients. So here's a $1,000 life-changing minute of wisdom.
Awesome.
I want you to imagine for a second, if you close your eyes and you're in a room with 4 walls. And one of those walls is your away wall. And it can be anywhere. In front of you, behind you, to your left, to your right. And it's everything you don't want. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you're going to physically make a list of everything you don't want in your life. You don't want again. You don't want ever. You don't want more of. The other wall. So tell me for you, Jennifer, where would that wall be?
It would be behind me.
Behind you. Got it. Now, your toward wall is going to be everything you want. All your hopes and dreams and wishes and goals and desires, magic wand life. Where would that wall be for you?
In front of me.
Okay. So you're going to make these 2 lists and you're going to take photos of them and you're going to put them, pin them in a note on your phone if you have a notes app so you have access to them always. And for the next 72 hours, I want you to wear a rubber band. And it can't be a soft, smushy scrunchie. It has to be like this. So it hurts like a son of a gun. Okay.
Snappy. Yep.
And snappy. So here we're going to the science of the snap. And here's what you're going to do. When we think about our thoughts and the energy of our thoughts and the power of our thoughts and why most people never get what they want in life because they're thinking about what they don't want. And the frequency and vibration of thought is so powerful, right? And so if we want a life, so what's your favorite music?
My favorite music?
Yeah.
I don't really have a favorite. Let's just say classical for.
Okay. What is like the least favorite music? Like you would not listen to it for $1 million?
Polka.
Okay. That's never heard. That's the first answer I've ever had with polka. I love it. So let's imagine for a second that everything you want in life is on the classical station 102.1.
Right.
And the freaking polka station is 99.5. Right. And so that's that frequency, 99.5. You can't hear classical on 99.5.
Right.
Well, when your thoughts are focused on what you don't want and your life is, and your circumstances and everything around you and your physical reality is stuck on the freaking polka. You have to raise your frequency. You can't hear what's on playing on 102.1 on radio station 99.5.
Right.
So how do we do that? We choose better feeling thought. We change what we're focusing on. So every single time you find yourself in the next 72 hours, either noticing it in the moment where you're in anxiety, you're in fear, you're in doubt, you're thinking about, oh my God, I don't want to be in this financial position. I don't want to be lonely, whatever it is. I need you to snap this as hard as you can. Like, it needs to hurt. And what this does is we need the pattern interrupt in the brain, and then you immediately choose a better feeling thought. And you can do that in a multitude of ways. And I'll just give you the easiest ones. Number one, look at your list and focus fully on something on that toward list. Okay?
Right.
So what you will notice is 99.9% of the time when you aren't feeling good or you're in that spiraling space, you're thinking about something on that away wall list. So think about something on the toward list as though it is, like what that would feel like, what it feels like to have that. Think about something for just a few seconds that you are genuinely grateful for. And it could just be the sun on your face, or, your kitty comes and crawls on your lap, whatever it is, but like authentically, genuinely for you that you're grateful for. And then who in this moment can I serve? And it does not need to be a big gesture. It can be a thought, a prayer, an intention, a text to a girlfriend. Hey, love you. It could be picking up the neighbors' newspapers that are sitting on their step and putting it at their door for them. Getting out of your own head in service of someone else. Now, at the beginning, you are probably not going to notice this as it's happening because you're so unconsciously ingrained, you don't even notice it. But what you will notice is you all of a sudden aren't feeling good in your body. Your heart's racing. You have like that anxious, like gut feeling. You are feeling super anxious or irritated or upset. Then I want you to think about, what was I thinking about most recently? Going back to that, then snap it and then do that process. And over the course, and keep track in your voice, in your notes or whatever, but keep track of what you're realizing you're thinking about in all these times. And what will happen is you will see as time goes on, if you really play full out, that you'll start catching yourself faster and faster. And pulling yourself out of it faster and faster. Whereas you would have sat in it for hours. Now we get it down to minutes and then seconds. Right. And then watch what starts to show up in your physical world.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Yeah. Because, to your point, thoughts, vibration, frequency, I mean, that is everything. And I love, the analogy that you used about the radio stations, right? Like, that's the perfect analogy. And I think most of us don't realize that we actually have the power to change the station, right? Like, we are not doomed to listen to Polka for the rest of our lives. Like, that's just not it. We can, and to your point, it's a relatively simple process of just becoming aware of, like, what is it I'm thinking about right now that's keeping me on this frequency? Yeah. Now, how can I move up a rung, kind of thing, right? Like, it's so powerful. And I wish more of us understood how powerful that we really are. Because I think people would do incredible things in the world. Like, they would make incredible changes in their lives if they realized they had the power to do it.
Well, and that's one of my core values, is I'm a magnet for miracles. And I get to teach people how to be that and experience that as well. Because you do have the power to normalize that. And you do have the power to change that radio station and get really clear on that menu order. Like, and it doesn't have to be hard and take years.
Right.
It can be really
fast. That's so powerful. And I think, to what you mentioned earlier as well, too, the fact that, like, you don't have to sit in therapy for 4 years and rehash all of these stories and get to the bottom of who said what. All you need to do is catch yourself in the moment, like right here, right now, and make a decision, like make a change, right? Like, so empowering.
Yeah.
Like, good. Incredible. Oh, I love this conversation.
I love this conversation too. So one thing I wanted to just throw out there, because it literally just launched a few days ago after months and months of preparation, is that we've created a very in-depth assessment called What's Standing Between You and Extraordinary Love. But it applies to really it's all about you and all areas of your life. And it's not like the What's My Spirit Animal quiz. Like, it takes about 10 minutes, but then we look at all 9 areas of your brain and your trauma score and your attachment score and all these things. And then you get a 28-page report based on your answers that all the insights. So it's a psychological assessment to really get you clear on where you are in those places. And I would love to offer it to your audience because it is so powerful.
Amazing. Oh, amazing. Yeah, we will make sure that gets in the show notes. And to everybody listening, like, no matter where you are, go check this out. I'm gonna go check it out. This has been such a good conversation, and we could go deep on all of these topics for like hours and hours. But what I love what you do in the world. I love that you are, empowering people to take charge of their lives, and that it doesn't need to be this big laborious process where we face every conversation we've ever had since the time we were born. No, we can do it right here, right now, exactly where we are, and make magic happen in our lives.
That's right.
Oh, so good. So good. I love this stuff.
Me too.
So where can people find more about you and your work? Where's the best place to connect with you?
So on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, it's at Riana Malia, which is RianaMalia. My website is simply rianamalia.com.
Okay.
I've also put together some amazing things on my website on the gifts page that I highly recommend you go check out. There's a Falling in Love with Myself Again journal that's phenomenal. Go grab that. However I can be of service, reach out. And I'd love to, again, anyone who's listening to this show who says, I feel like this could be my line in the sand moment, like I would offer you an actual complimentary call with me, not with someone on my team, to just have a conversation about what that looks like for you.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I love this conversation. And to those of you listening, if you like what you heard, please go give us a rating or a review. Or even better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think might get something out of it. So until next time, thanks for listening to the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. If you like what you heard, the greatest compliment you could give us would be to comment below and subscribe. Or better yet, you could share this episode with a friend, a relative, or somebody you think could get something out of it. And remember, midlife is not the beginning of the end. It's simply the beginning of your kick-ass next chapter.